I always find it really interesting reading the discourse online surrounding politics within subcultures. Specifically, the punk subculture seems to have this never-ending debate over the validity of right-wing punks. You know, Trump punks, punks for Trump. Eee! And will proudly wear their Trump beanie while saying, yes, I am so punk. It really does feel like they will argue till the end of time that punk and Trump is a match made in heaven, which is interesting. I always find it like astounding that punks will come online confidently on TikTok and make posts about being Republican and punk as this huge like got ya moment, like they've just done something shocking and groundbreaking, loudly proclaiming, I am punk, I am Republican, we exist. But for anyone with like a base level knowledge on punk history knows this is not a gotcha moment at all. It is actually hilarious. Because what these self-proclaimed punk Republicans are presenting as is the most commercialized, surface level version of punk ever imaginable. This is complete style over substance. Well done. Basically what you have done is gone on Fortnite, gone in the shop and brought a skin. This is a performance piece. Lovely costume, well done. We've got the mass marketed plastic accessories, we've got the print on demand t-shirts, and to top it off, we've got a Trump beanie. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. In truth, this is exactly who I imagine when someone proudly says they're Republican and a punk. As there is no rebellion here, there is no fight, just complacency that has been directly marketed to you. No, don't worry, you're definitely fighting against something. You've got spikes on your neck. Whoa, rock on, dude. This is why, like, in modern times, in the modern offshoots of what punk once was, you know, like the hardcore scene nowadays, pretty much nobody dresses up like this. It's all just t-shirts, jeans, and a pair of trainers. Why? Because the uniform doesn't really mean anything anymore. It is no longer a wink or a nod to who's in your community, because the communities have been diluted by absolute frubes like this and, well, capitalism. It is no longer countercultural if you are buying your spikes from a mass-produced place, is it? You may vaguely look like the punks you so aspire to be like from many a year ago, but what you have actually done is co-opted a movement. Well done! The origins of punk is a countercultural movement where your presence will never be welcomed and historically has not aligned with punk's core values. But then how does it happen, Cal? Why is this occurring? Well, free will. Humans are fully capable to perceive, conjure up any thought they want, and they can just make it their absolute in their head. Someone can do any sort of mental gymnastics to justify their belief structure making sense. They can just ignore the history and be like, yeah, I'm punk and Trump. Lee. So of course, naturally, we will get people coming online claiming they are Trump supporters and punks. And this is not a new age phenomenon that can just be blamed on TikTok and how it's like degraded the substance behind subcultural movements. Right-wing groups, neo-Nazis, the far-right, fascists, all of that bunch of people have been co-opting subcultures, countercultural places since the beginning. So let's look at this conversation, how the far-right has always co-opted subculture spaces, and discuss it and understand it. But before we do get into this web of conversation, I probably should introduce myself so I'm just not some random man ranting at you on the internet. My name is Cal, and on this channel, we do videos talking about things, and then we will discuss it as a community down in the comment section below. So if this sounds like fun for you, please feel free to subscribe and join the community. Woohoo! Back on to right-wing politics in subcultures, specifically punks. To understand how people can just boldly come online and claim they're Trump and punk, we're Trump's a punk, you can't stop us, yeah, we're fighting, and why this is hilarious, and like so many traditional punks will just call out these people and be like, yeah, you make no sense whatsoever. You must first come with me on a journey through time and space, back to when punk all started. Yippee, let's do a history lesson. Okay, cool. The roots of punk back in the day, before TikTok, before we had punks dancing to the Renegade or whatever, punk wasn't just about fashion. Actually, I think if you ask many punks, they'd say that is the least important part of being a punk. Punk was about ideologies. One of the big pillars of punk, the things you'll see people talking about a lot, is the DIY ethos. Do it yourself. This is not to be confused with the TikTokification of the DIY ethos, which is buy a mass-produced t-shirt and then get a legal guardian or someone you trust to iron on some patches onto said t-shirt, and then you get on TikTok and dance around to commercialize punk, I don't know, the Sex Pistols, get 1,000 likes, become the Punk Lord 6000, and gatekeep people on what is and what isn't punk. Ah, that old chestnut. Punk's DIY ethos originally was about self-sufficiency in a system that didn't care about working class youth. Punks didn't just listen to their own music. They created it. They created shows. They'd also make and distribute their own zines and basically built this whole underground community for like-minded individuals. And by that I don't mean literally underground, like, oh, where's my mining hat? I'm trying to get level 99 mining on RuneScape. I mean just a community for people that shared the same ethos and values. Traditional early punks found a way to create culture, create substance outside of the mainstream. What many punk musicians did is they rejected these big mainstream music labels. I know some sold out, you know. But what many would do is join independent, artist-led labels. The entire idea of punk was to be alternative to the mainstream, to the system, not, you know, bow down to it. And politically, of course, this DIY ethos also carried over into their anti-establishment thinking. Punk is fundamentally about challenging power structures, whether that is government, corporate greed, or societal norms that tell people how they should behave. And this is why it's so ironic that the self-proclaimed conservative punks believe that their ideas are compatible with punk ideology. Punk was not about maintaining the system or upholding and keeping to traditional values, it was about disrupting them. Now, of course, this is where you'll see the modern day conservative punks start to do their mental gymnastics, because they will be like, actually, I am rebelling. I'm rebelling against the woke left. The mainstream is too liberal, so I'm going against that. I don't want none of that. Therefore, I am true punk. I'm rebelling. Okay, look, let's explore this together, shall we? And understand why this is wrong. What punks actually fought for was the liberation of people. They protested to give people more power. They fought for self-expression and personal autonomy, not conformity to rigid tradition. When punks broke gender norms, wore provocative clothing, and disrupted societal expectation, it was never about reinforcing the status quo. It was always about breaking it. So when a modern day conservative punk says they are fighting back against the woke agenda, they are literally breaking the foundational principles of punk. Because team, let's be real for a second, fighting for human rights, LGBTQ+ rights, anti-racism is not establishment politics. The very idea that punk should be policing how people live and how people express themselves, how they identify, is the complete antithesis of punk's original message. Like, punk literally was just a giant middle finger to conformity. Republican punks, however, are out there waving their Trump flag, wearing their Trump beanies, and supporting Trump is supporting people and society to behave in a very specific traditional way. Goodbye, personal expression and personal sense of identity. Hello, conformity. Can you not see the problems here? If you really think Donald Trump, the man that has spent his whole life profiting off of corporate greed, is somehow punk rock, like, how? That does not make sense. This is like using a Waterstone on Eevee and wondering why you got Vaporeon instead of Flareon. This sort of logic it really angers me. Well, there is no logic. It's illogical. And like, one of the biggest arguments the conservative punks will make is, well, punks aren't Democrats either. Yes, well done. That is correct. But that does not mean suddenly you can mental gymnastics your way over to Republican punk. Because yes, punk was never about endorsing mainstream political parties, but due to punk's original ideologies and ethos of being anti-establishment, being against big authority figures, being against structures of power. This means punk has historically stood against right-wing conservative politics, because right-wing ideologies are deep-rooted in enforcing power structures. From the very beginning, punks were seen at protests challenging conservative ideologies. Additionally, people will cite bands like the Dead Kennedys, The Clash, as they openly called out conservative ideologies that would directly harm working class people, marginalized communities, and individual freedom. We also can't forget movements around this time such as Rock Against Racism and Riot Girl, as these were inherently leftist, feminist, and anti-fascist. And this is why, historically, punks have had far more in common with socialists, anarchists, and leftists than with conservatives or right-wing ideologies. Also, like a side note, a big thing you'll see many punks subscribe to is anarchism, anarchy, and it sounds daunting, it sounds scary, but you'll see like a lot on TikTok especially, punks being like, I'm for anarchy, I'm anarchism, bro. And you're like, oh, what is this? What is this scary sounding thing? Basically, it just means a world where people govern themselves. There is no hierarchical, needless power structures. It's like exchanging of goods and services to each other. You're a community, you come together as a team, working cohesively, synergy, instead of buying and selling capitalism, working a job you dislike for 70 years, backbreaking stuff, right? Think of like a commune, but without any like culty undertones, I suppose. So yes, in short, are people correct when they say punks aren't liberals? Yeah, 100%. They have their own ideologies, but those ideologies link far more up with the left than they do with right-wing conservatism about how people should conduct themselves and, you know, identity, autonomy, and how people should exist within this world, right? Punk and liberal social views see humans far more as that, actual humans with personalities, opinions, and feelings, rather than conservatives that want you to be an asset in a machine that they can sweat until you die and then boom, let's just get in a robot to replace you. Now, these right-wing punks, like I said at the very beginning, is not a new phenomenon, not to be confused with the feminine nomenon by Chappell Rowan. Subcultures have always been co-opted by people trying to twist and change the original ideologies of said subculture. We've seen this time and time again. One of the most famous examples I did a whole video on is the skinhead subculture. What originally was working class people from Britain, you know, intertwining in their life, mixing with people that had immigrated to England, notably influenced by Jamaican culture, this traditional skinhead got taken over by far-right extremists and political groups, turning the symbol of skinhead from being solidarity of working class and real people just getting together and just sharing, now became a symbol for neo-Nazism. The same thing happened to punk. Because free will, people can just take anything they like the look of and, you know, make it for their own agenda. And if you get enough people together, that then becomes a group, and that's what it can then end up representing. There are many offshoots of punk that claim they are right-wing punks. They are this, that, and the other. They are neo-Nazi punks. Think about it. In one of the punk music genres, the punk rock oi genre, it is known there was a whole bunch of raging literal neo-Nazis. People took a sound and aesthetic that was raging against the machine, that was an unintentional reference, but they took this sound that was actually talking about something. The neo-Nazis and these far-right people just take it all so literally. They see this very aggressive look and they see this aggressive sound, the punk rock sound, and they never for a second think, well, what does this look for? Is it because they're trying to fight back at the status quo and on conservatism about how you and I should act? No, it's just for anger. That means I can be a neo-Nazi and co-opt this and spout Nazi nonsense. Like, it just screams thoughtless, running on sheer anger without actually thinking critically about what you're doing. And that in itself is a true capitalistic right-wing ethos and ideology. Take without actually thinking why. Like, why did this movement come about? What was it trying to do? These right-wing absolute just teapots had things like Rock Against Communism. This is why it's genuinely so important to engage in critical thought. If you find a subculture you like, if you enjoy something and you may resonate with its look, really ask yourself, well, why do they present like that? What are the ideologies behind it? Otherwise, if it's just permanent, thoughtless interaction without actual critical engagement, you get people being like, yeah, I can be a Trump punk, and they don't see the absolute comedy in that, and how that really does turn into very scary things like neo-Nazi punks, neo-Nazi skinheads, all of these things. It really is a danger to society. It degrades subcultures, and it ruins their merit and their impact for positive things and change in the world. Punk itself, the aesthetic, has also been so co-opted by capitalism. What once stood for DIY rebellion and working class expression has now just become this mass-marketed aesthetic. Instead of this aesthetic rebelling and rejecting against, capitalism and authority, now the look is kind of just heavily associated with selling rebellion to teenagers. And because of it just being like commodified, it's just another gimmick now. This is why we have right-wing TikTokers who are like, yeah, I'm punk and Trump. They are just reshaping punk into something that fits their conservative values. If your so-called rebellion is about keeping marginalized groups down, restricting freedoms, or policing people's existences, that is not punk. That is simply just being a foot soldier for the system. Well done, you're a cog in the machine. I think, unfortunately, a big component to why, subcultures are getting just like watered down so much in modern times is unfortunately TikTok. And look, I've defended TikTok and subcultures in many videos. I think it is a good way to, connect people from those subcultures. And, it can be a useful tool for sharing information and such. I've made that point many times. However, what is also a prominent problem is subculture history constantly being rewritten by people who just clearly don't know what they're talking about, or people that don't actively engage in these spaces. You'll see some conservative punks, or just people in general, just be like, punk was never political. But this is not the case. Many punk bands would refute this, but what's happening is on social media platforms reward outrage. So when some like Republican TikTok just spout some just outrageous nonsense, it creates conversation, and then through that it can create misinformation, because anybody can basically come online and be like the commercialized concept, the Vivian Westwood-esque version of punk, and be like, I'm a punk, ask me anything, and then just spout misinformation. And as I mentioned earlier, this is why I think in modern day times, like in the present day hardcore scene, a lot of people aren't wearing this sort of stuff. They're literally just t-shirt and jeans. Why? Because the uniform no longer exists in present day. You can tell a lot more about a person if they're going to their local scene regularly rather than them having some spiky collar on their neck. However, I do want to say, as I know, dressing up and how you express yourself with clothes is typically very important, in subculture spaces when you're young. I remember when I was young, and like all my other like alternative friends were young, we would dress up like the proper emos, because I think when you're younger, a large portion of your self-identity comes through your clothes and how you dress and how you present. It's like this big visual sign for what you're putting out to the world, right? Because you may not be able to vote yet, or you may live under your legal guardians or whoever's rules, and they might be like, no, you can't do this, you can't go to shows, you can't protest. So your dressing up is a very important way for you to express and identify yourself. Therefore, if you've watched this and you think I'm just dunking on everyone that decides to dress up like the Vivian Westwood-esque punk, this very like commodified, sell it to the mass public version of punk, I don't think, everybody that dresses like that is, just a big poser. I don't think that's the case at all. As you will see, punks at protests who do dress like this. I think if you are engaging with it authentically, and in yourself if you are doing it authentically, right? In yourself if you are keeping it punk or you are being commercialized punk. That is not for me to police. That is not for me to come down and be judge, jury, and executioner wrong, because truthfully, I don't care. Only you will know if you're being authentic within the subculture. And if you confidently feel you are, then hey, cool. I'm glad the look resonates with you. Keep doing your thing. It's an eye-catching look, and it was popular for a reason. You don't need to feel bad about that. However, if you come online, say you're punk, and it's clearly all fast fashion crap, and you just spout your punk and Republican, and you don't actually seem to be doing anything with the punk umbrella, being in that world, it's just so annoying and thoughtless. It's just you want to say you're rebelling and feel like you're doing without actually doing anything, which is a huge problem in subcultures nowadays. You want to just feel like you're part of something without actually doing anything. It's like being spoon-fed instant gratification. And I think that's why I literally have no interest in identifying with any subculture. I just much rather exist and do my own thing, right? And I think that's what a lot of people do as they get older. They're just like, yeah, this is also diffracted. But I think it's really good that there's people that will confidently say, I'm a punk and I don't stand for this shit. And you don't have to be a punk to acknowledge that right-wing punks, Trump punks, just do not make sense. Team Future Cow here. Hello, hello, hello. Yeah, I've got my YouTube voice back. I'm very deep in the edit right now, and there's like a couple of things I just want to voice now that I'm going through the edit and I have like my live conscious thoughts on everything. Number one, the main content creator I've used in this video, who was like a Trump punk, punks for Trump. I'm gonna blur, as you will have seen throughout this whole video. Like, why is this person's face blurred, Cal? Surely we should know who they are. This person has been doing this punk for Trump content for literally years. Like, I remember seeing it years ago and kind of just thinking this must be rage bait or whatever, but they kept on going, they kept on going, they kept on going. And then I realized, okay, this isn't a bit. I would like sporadically check back on them every few months. And what I kind of realized is, despite punks trying to educate them, you know, and explain to them things about punk ideologies, they don't really care. So it kind of came clear to me that all they actually want is just get attention from this. So I'm just gonna blur out their face. Comments like this make it so blaringly obvious that this is what a true poser looks like. I think this might be the first time in history I've ever actually called someone a poser, but this is genuine posing. Just non-stop thoughtless engagement with terms like punk and not truly understanding the history attached to the word. Yeah, no screen time for you, but you did make a very interesting conversation. And on the people in your comment section being like, yeah, I'm Trump punk too. You're all very silly billies. That is what I think about you. Like, team, I like this guy right here likes hardcore music. Am I actively part of the scene though? No, I do not go to gigs regularly enough to be an active member. I'm just not. I can appreciate the music and I may listen to it as I go about my life, but am I an active member? The issue is I think people get these terms and they kind of like what it's about and they're like, yeah, that's me now. This is part of my identity. For like the longest time, I thought punks for Trumps was just pure rage bait, just like silly ha-hees. But if you just go through TikToks like this and through forums on the internet, many people generally think you can be punk and Trump, a punk who supports Trump because they're like, yeah, we're rebelling, we're fighting back. And no, look what punks were actually rebelling and fighting back against. You are directly supporting that by endorsing Trump, by voting for Trump. Pfft, yeah. Also, like, second thing, as I was like going back through my edit on this video and, you know, just going back through my notes and looking at like punk on TikTok and what people are saying, a thing people just love to bring up that I kind of just ignore because I don't think it actually adds anything of merit to the overall conversation, but I'll mention it anyway just in case we get a few comments. But people will be like, hey Cal, the guy from the Ramones was a Republican. Got you there, Cal. One of the first original punk bands, Republican. Boom, boom, boom. We totally got you. We totally got you. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. That is not getting me. There's like a couple of different things we need to unpack here. Firstly, when people are like, the Ramones, the original punk band, that is just not true. And it's just sweeping over and ignoring the history of music and how punk came about. While the Ramones may have been one of the first full punk bands that gained notoriety and attention, the truth is there would have been dozens and dozens of the Ramones in their local scene, respectively. It's just this is the band that got the attention. To say Ramones were the ones that birthed this from nowhere, they were these mad inventors, these geniuses, just isn't a truthful answer, is it? We've got other contributions like the Stooges that would then lead into what punk would become in the first, the second, the third, and so on waves, right? I'm pretty sure this is the quote people are talking about when they talk about, you know, Johnny Ramone and being a Republican. People drift towards liberalism at a young age. I always hope they change when they see how the world really is. Added to this, he was even kind enough to list his 10 favorite Republican figures. Wow, this is yeah, not a got you moment. Someone being like, yeah, liberalism cool when young, and now that I'm old, I actually see how the world works. I'm smart, I know what's going on. Just means their opinions changed, right? What you used to resonate with about the Ramones no longer represents who Johnny is today. Or was today, should I say. Also, this same article even states one of the other fellow band members, Jerry Ramone, was a liberal. So, is that suddenly a gotcha? Just because one egg is bad does not mean that represents the whole of punk, which historically, until co-opted by right wings and just capitalistic people that wanted to make money off the whole punk scene, it was very clearly about liberating people, giving power to people, challenging the conservative structures that be. Anyways, team, thank you for listening to my random, rant that I've now just self-injected into this video. Hopefully it added a little bit more stuff there that was actually thought-provoking, and it didn't just like disjoint the video completely and diffract it. Anyways, I shall pass back on to Past Cow to round off this video. Yes. So after that like big old splurge of conversation, you might be like, well, what does punk mean now, Cow? Well, due to free will, due to the diffraction of everything ever, due to, things being co-opted, and to capitalism and creepy old men incorporated sticking their fingers in these countercultural movements and realizing they can profit off it and sell it to people as commercialized rebelling. So not actual rebelling, but just pseudo-rebelling to make it feel like you are doing something. All subcultures have been diluted, in truth. That does not mean they are not super alive and kicking. It just means you have to actively go against the mainstream, not in like the most obvious places, and, look for them. Engage in your local scene is always going to be a very important part of any countercultural practice, right? Unfortunately, on apps like TikTok, because they are so visual based, sometimes it puts more importance, not always, but a lot of the time it can put a lot of importance on the superficial nature of subcultures rather than actually any substance. But it obviously has its uses because it can help get people into the subculture because they may find the aesthetic interesting, like we've mentioned with goths, with punks. There is a youth there, especially for youth culture, attracting people in with the aesthetics part, because I think with self-expression when you're younger, it is a very important thing. However, within like local scenes and the actual substance of subculture such as punk, we still have DIY venues, activist movements, protesting. All of that stuff is still going on. Fighting against the machine, raging against the machine. Again, not a reference. It's still a thing. Real punks are still out there today, fighting capitalism, fighting oppression, and corporate greed and control. However, they probably just don't look how you expect them to look. Republican punks, on the other hand, well, they are clearly basically just wearing a costume. You truly are raging with the machine. And also, like a side note, I just want to mention quickly, if people have made it this far and you'll be like, well, what about all those punk bands that came out and like supported Trump, whatever? I see people always talk about this and like the Sex Pistols and those arguments. Yet, sellout bands, that is marketed punk. And I'm sure there's really interesting arguments you can make about it could still empower the youth with their lyrics. Yeah, sure. But don't let that distract you in this actual conversation of what the real punk scene looks like if you actually involve yourself in these scenes. Please. Also, go check out your local hardcore scene. The music coming out is really awesome. And it's good. It's good fun to get amongst it. Yeah, that's probably what I've got to say about that. I'm Cal, like I said at the very beginning of this video. And yes, I'm excited to have this conversation with you all. Look, free will is one hell of a thing. It's a beautiful thing, but also because of it, you'll get people just ignoring all the T's and C's and claiming you can be far right and punk. And of course, you can say that word, punk and Republican, be like, yeah, I'm those things. Of course. Okay. But a lot of people in these movements will refute you because it doesn't really match up. Yeah. Good times. Anyways, the discussion floor is now open. But on top of that, power. Show and tell time. And for show and tell, I've actually got something very, very, very special that people keep asking to see. So I will get to it. Skog. People keep asking, where's Skog? Is Skog okay? Skog is alive and well and happy. They still just live on my couch. They live a good life. And we still watch lots of movies together. I'll take your hat for your moment, please, for a moment, Skog. Put it on my head. In truth, I think I needed a whole new filming area set up purely because I look back at a lot of my older videos and I don't know why, I'm just like, ooh. I just find myself like internally just going at those videos. So I think like a new filming area made me feel like I had just this new fresh way to make videos again and not feel locked into my older self without this being some sort of like really introspective rant about self-growth. But Skog's alive and well, and I just can't figure out a place in my new filming setup to put Skog. There's no place unless I put him on my lap, but I think that would be a bit off-putting for newer viewers. But to confirm, Skog is very alive and well, still releasing SoundCloud music, and they will be loved by me for my whole time on this planet. So even if you do not see them regularly, they are still there being loved for, like everything in my collection. Anyways, I've been your boy Cal. He says again, oh my gosh, stop saying your name, bro. Please share your comments and thoughts on this. I'm always happy to discuss things, even if you don't agree with me. There's never a pressure to agree with me. That's kind of what this whole purpose of these videos and this channel is about. Just conversation and expressing ourselves authentically. There's no pressure to be a rigid expectation here. Anyway, that sounds like some awful PR statement. Awful, Cal. Said your name again. I'm going now, bye. Okay, bye now. Seriously, I'm going. Goodbye. Put down the phone. Okay, bye. See you, bye.